The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are reviewing the Rogue cards in the Lair of Dagon, the 5th Mythos pack in the Innsmouth Conspiracy cycle. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Just a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get a Tentacle, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing, respectively. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. Rogue card in the pack is Gaia. It is a 2-cost asset that costs 2 experience points. However, it does have the exceptional keyword, so it will set you back 4 experience points. It has the Pact trait, which I don't think is relevant at the moment. You get +1 willpower, +1 intellect, +1 combat, and +1 agility. It has the forced effect. After Gaius enters play, make a promise using the following formula. I shall not draw, play, or commit any cards during each of my turns. If you break this promise while Gaius is in play, discard it and add 10 curse tokens to the Chaos bag. This one has generated quite a bit of discussion on the Discord. Is an exceptional dark horse something that interests you, Nate?
Yes, but I don't think in the way that the developers intended. What interests me more is just playing this for 2 resources and adding 10 curse tokens to the bag.
I think a lot of players are looking at exactly that.
I think if you honestly wanted to use it as a dark horse, you could build your deck around it. You could maybe not put any skills in your deck. But I feel like there's always going to be a time you're going to need to be able to commit cards to a skill test. So I don't think you're going to be doing that very often. No one's ever going to not play assets, so that's not happening. And maybe you wouldn't draw cards during your turns. I could see that. But rogues kind of like to do that with cards like Lucky Cigarette Case or Pickpocketing. So... yeah, I think this is mostly just a combo piece to get 10 curse tokens into the bag. What do you think, man from Lang?
Yeah, I think I really like this card because it's very interesting for sure. You know, it's got the adding all of those giving you all of those bonuses is obviously very tempting, especially for an investigator like Preston, who has very low skill values to begin with. If you were to combine this, I know there are Dark Horse Preston decks out there. I played one recently on the channel, and if you could get that and this down, then you're getting +2 across the board. So he's sitting at a 3. I think this sort of card prompts a deck building challenge for you if you want to. You can really build around it. You could certainly maybe get around the draw restriction easily enough if you're not necessarily drawing cards. Playing cards, that's pretty tough. That's basically assets and events, and I don't think I've ever seen a deck that could get away without playing anything. So, but committing, it would be, you could certainly build a deck where either you don't have any skills in your deck, and you're just relying on cards like the next card we're going to look at, Hard Knocks level 4, to spend resources to pass tests that you need rather than committing skill tests. So I like it from that perspective, that there's a few different ways you could probably build a Gaius deck, and it would be gives deck builders out there an interesting card to play around with. But yeah, I think the other option is simply to break your promise immediately and fill the bag with 10 curse tokens. Now, you've played the rogue curse deck. I don't think I have. I've played a couple seeker versions of the curse deck, but I haven't played the rogue version. Do you see this fitting into that deck style? Is this something you'd be willing to pay 4 experience points for to get the 10 tokens?
That's honestly a very good question. From my experience, it's more that you're playing cards like Faustian Bargain and Riestrad to just put enough curse tokens into the bag with the rogue deck. It's not like the seeker deck where you want as many as possible in order to either translate the grimoire or use cards like Stygian Eye. The the rogue deck is more about using those cards to your advantage and then kind of disregarding the disadvantage of them. So I think you'd have to build your curse deck in such a way that you'd have to like be able to take advantage of having all of them in the bag at once. But that being said, there are certainly ways that you could do that. And with it being too experienced, you can include it in like a Trish deck, or eventually at some point, I'm sure we'll get a Seeker slash Rogue off class Investigator that could also include this card. But I think the biggest knock against this card is that it's exceptional. So it's, while you kind of have to build your deck around it, there's only one of it in your deck. So it's very unlikely that you'll be able to see it.
The one thing that, we did look at, Rogues have received a lot of exceptional cards this cycle, the other two being Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny. And I think the big difference between those cards and this one is that at least those other cards had the item trait. So if you're not playing a rogue who's capable of drawing through their deck quickly, at least you can fall back on a card like Backpack or its level 2 upgrade to fish for that item trait. This one doesn't have that option. So unless we get some card down the road that interacts with that pact trait, you're going to have to draw this one the hard way, and that's it's hard to build around a single card in your deck, even with the deck sizes being as small as they are in this game. Now maybe like if you're looking for an investigator, maybe Parallel Skids could do something with this, since he has a deck size of 25, or maybe Safina, because she draws such a huge hand at the start of the game. Maybe there's something there that you could play around with. But yeah, it's like Safina is all about events most of the time, so you're not going to really be able to, then you've got to either look at drawing or committing as your. So yeah, it's a very interesting card with I think a lot of different types of. I think there could be a lot of different builds and a lot of different investigators. It's just working around that exceptional trait that is the exceptional keyword that is going to be the big issue if you want to build a deck around this. How would you rate it?
Ooh, that's tough. Honestly, I want to give this card a +1 just because it's so interesting, and it's generated a lot of buzz within the community. So I think that alone propels this card into near +1 territory, but it's so niche that I don't think you're really going to play it very often.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, it's without having sat down and actually built the deck to see how it would actually work in practice. This is a tough one to rate, because I suspect better deck builders than I out there have probably already figured out a way to really leverage this thing, but either for the skill bonuses or just the 10 curse tokens. Yeah, where would I stand on this? Maybe I think I'd probably give it a +1 just for the interesting, because it's so interesting and it does open up some interesting builds. But if I was rating it just as a card that you would put in your deck, I think it would rate a lot lower than, it'd probably go down to at least a 0. Any time they put the exceptional trait on a card, for me, it knocks it down a peg almost immediately.
Yeah, me too. It just makes the card that much more inconsistent, and in a game where you need to hit the ground running in Arkham, you can't dawdle around in a game like this. So, cards like this can be difficult to get going.
I tend to find, like, I know there are people who enjoy playing sort of a combo related style, but I just find that combo play in Arkham doesn't really work all that well in the end, because the game is a race, and you really do need to hit the ground running, and you don't really have time for fancy tricks to. You don't have the time to pull off these fancy tricks. You need cards that don't really have conditions, and you can just play and go, and you're not sitting around. Well, if I draw X card and Y card, then I can do Z. I tend to really shy away from that, and just because of speed. The second rogue card in the pack is Hard Knocks level 4. It is a 2-cost asset. It has 2 combat and 2 agility skill icons. Enters play with 2 resources. You can replenish these resources at the start of each round. Has the talent trait. Again, you can, as a free triggered ability, spend 1 resource from your resource pool, or from Hard Knocks, you get +1 combat or +1 agility for this skill test. The level 0 version of this one sees quite a bit of play in a variety of rogue and off-class rogue investigators. Jenny Barnes being chief among them for the longest time, although just checking over at Arkham DB, there seem to be quite a few Wendy Adams decks that were using this as well. Again, much like Hyper Awareness we looked at earlier in these reviews, the replenishing the 2 resources is a nice perk. But again, I think this is a nice to have rather than a requirement.
Yeah, I would agree, especially in Rogue, that is notorious for generating so many resources anyway, that you often end games with a giant pile of money that you could have spent doing other things. So, like you said, this is definitely more of a luxury upgrade.
Yeah, and when as soon as they bump the level to level 4, this just becomes a rogue card. There aren't any off-class rogues that can take this, at least not until we get an investigator who synergizes with the talent trait or something like that. And it just, again, where it's this whole set of cards, like we got the I believe it was physical training and arcane studies in the Jacqueline Fine and Nathaniel Cho's starter decks last year, so these are sort of filling out the talents from the core set. But I feel like we knew these cards were coming, but I don't think they're going to generate a whole lot of excitement from deck builders. I don't think people are like, what my deck needed to be successful was Hard Knocks 4.
Very true. Except maybe that random Preston deck.
Yeah. So
aside from that, but
I think I give this one a 0 and we move on. That's going to do it for our look at the rogue cards in the Lair of Dagon. The rogues get 1 boring card and 1 very, very interesting card in Gaius. Gaius is one to play around with for sure. If you're a fan of building decks in this game, this is a dream come true, I think, because you've got there are a lot of different investigators who can use this card because of its experience point cost, and then the various promises you can make give you several options to build around, and then of course you can just simply ignore it and go for the 10 curse tokens and play around with that. I know somebody like I haven't played the Dexter curse deck yet, but there might be something there, because the Dexter could play this and then break the promise, add 10 curse tokens, and then Tides of Fate into 10 bless tokens, and who knows.
Or he could use things like Armageddon, those spells that we looked at in some of the previous packs, and make good use out of those. So
yeah. So the just adding the 10 tokens is a very attractive option as well. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.